Weapons and wars do not make a nation strong. Food and peace does. And the health of a country is judged or should be judged by its level of food security. Using these parameters, is India secure? Have we managed to secure our food? Do we have a food policy? Are we on the right track? For this and more, we speak to a well known agriculture expert in this episode and ask him the relevant questions. Welcome to another edition of Off Limits. Our guest today is Devinder Sharma, a well known agriculture expert who's been writing actually extensively on our food policy, food shortages, farmer stir, and all the problems that India has and all the progress we might have made in our food self-sufficiency. So welcome to this
Thank you.
program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Pleasure.
So Mr. Sharma, what I really want to ask you is the controversy that we are reading about in the newspapers these days is about wheat. Now wheat exports, we stop them, we take them, we stop them. What exactly is the problem?
No, well, that kind of a knee-jerk reaction, I think the policymakers are in a better position to explain. But yes, the message that has come out is that there has been a flip-flop in export and export policy as far as the wheat crop is concerned. But I think if we put that aside, in my understanding, the order that the government issued some days back saying that India bans export of wheat, I think was very timely and very appropriate. Why I am saying this is because let us not forget, India is a country which has roughly about 150 million people to feed, and out of that, 80 million people are nutritionally, dependent on the government supplies or the government's effort to make food security available at the household level. Now, considering this, I think a country like India, I think there's no point being very enthusiastic about the possibility of exports and some people making money. I'm always for that. I'm not saying that that was wrong, but I feel the country's food security issue is paramount. And we cannot at any stage compromise on our food security needs. Why I'm saying this is, let's be very clear. Today, let us say if we allow unbridled export of wheat, what will happen is the private companies would like to export every grain that is available for export. Now, what it will result into is a kind of a shortfall, because let's not forget wheat is a one-year crop, or let's say once in a year crop, I would say, to put it correctly. Now, the next harvest is coming only in April. So you have to be very sure that whatever supplies you have got, and considering that the global climate is going under aberrations, we already faced it in the month of March. Secondly, we don't know what will happen with the monsoons. We don't know what will happen with the next wheat season. All those factors included, we don't even know whether the pandemic will come again or not. I think a country like India needs to be well prepared. So I think the decision to impose a ban was perfect and was required.
Right. But then what is the situation? Are we short of wheat? Have we got a surplus of wheat? Over the years, I think we've been in touch, and we've also, as journalists, always been told, and I don't mean under this government, even, for years now, decades really, that all the food go downs are rotting, wheat is rotting, we have a surplus of wheat, we don't know what to do with it, we don't know where to send it. And then we start our exports and we're continuously exporting, and now we're suddenly not exporting. So what is the situation? Do we have wheat, enough wheat, or we do not?
I think this is a very, very important question that you posed. I'll tell you why. Because for the last 5 years, we have had record production year after year, and our godowns were overflowing. We at one stage we had 100 million tons of stocks with us, and in fact, the economists of this country were saying that the farmers have been pampered a lot because of the MSP regime that that forces them to go for wheat and paddy crop rotation, and then there is a mounting buffer we have got. and that's much of it is rotting, and all those kind of points were thrown at the farmers as if farmers were the culprit. Now suddenly, after the pandemic, first of all, during the pandemic, there was a big lesson that India actually avoided two pandemics. One, of course, is the pandemic we know, the COVID-19. The other was, imagine if there was no surplus in this country, imagine what would happen to the food insecurity that the pandemic had thrown up. So, that is why, everyone compliments the government for distributing 5 kilo wheat free of cost to those people who needed it. And I think that has played a very significant role in addressing food insecurity. Now, even after that stage, we were told that no, farmers, as I said earlier, are pampered, and so we need to really cut back on that. We'll allow markets to operate. The three laws were very important and crucial for the country, those laws that have been withdrawn now, and so on. Now, interestingly, all those people who were blaming farmers, blaming the environmental consequences of intensive farming practices and so on, completely have gone quiet now. You don't hear about the excess food stocks that we had. In fact, every economist is now telling us that, we need to export more. That means, you want to put the burden again on farmers to produce those crops which at one stage were thought as environmentally disruptive. And now so that tells you that, where the concerns of the economic dominant thinking is basically glued on to where the money is, or where the money bag is. Having said that, your question is very important and relevant, because I think the message from this particular flip-flop or the U-turn that the government has taken is very, very clear. And also internationally, if we see what has happened, is that every country needs to be fully self-sufficient as far as food production is concerned. Why this is important, Seema ji, is because the Russian-Ukraine region, which is in conflict, is basically supplying roughly 30% of the global food needs, or food supplies comes from that particular region. 30 countries are actually the ones who have been getting food right from Russia or Ukraine, all these years. Now, these 30 countries are standing with the begging bowl today. In fact, not only dependent on this particular region, if we look at the FAO statistics, it tells us that globally, 200 million people have gone below the hunger line now.
Of the countries, please, I'm just interfering. The 30 countries.
Yes, let me allow me that to finish this. So they are saying 53 countries are food insecure at the moment. 200 million people have gone below the poverty line, and so there is a food crisis. This is the third food crisis since the first food crisis struck the world. That was in 2007-2008, in which 37 countries faced food riots. Let's not forget, the situation is very dire. And the prices, even before the war, global prices had shot up 40% higher than what it was earlier. In fact, in 2007-2008, and if you look at 2022, the prices in 2022 had crossed the prices of prices that were attained in 2007-2008, which led to the global food crisis. So I think this is one scenario before us. Now, which countries are the ones impacted? Egypt is the biggest importer of food. I don't know. I'm in fact very sorry people haven't learned from history. When Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt, the Roman emperors were seducing her or trying to be closer to her because she was a supplier of wheat to the Roman Empire. There was a time when Egypt was supplying wheat to the Roman Empire, and today Egypt is looking for wheat from Europe. So look at the turn of events. But anyway, Egypt was the biggest importer, and then the countries like Turkey, Philippines, Somalia, Sudan, you name it. And the people there are affected or impacted by the war here, and plus the global situation changing. So we are in that dire situation. So when I say countries are standing with the begging bowl, they're looking for wherever they can source the supplies from. Now, India had the surplus carryover stocks of last year. We had about 19 million tons still with us, in the month of April. Now, roughly, if you look at the procurement season today, we have got about 18 million tons today, which is a big shortfall considering the target to procure was 44.4 million tons. So there is a drop of more than 50% as far as the procurement is concerned. Even now, it looks to be very comfortable. There's no denying about it. We are not in a panic situation. But who knows about tomorrow? And with everything changing, environment, playing tipsy-turvy and topsy-turvy, or whatever you call it, and look at the global situation as far as look at China's pandemic situation and so on. We should be doubly careful, and I think that is what perhaps the government has taken care of.
So when you say, I mean, now as a layperson, I'm going to ask you, when you say our procurement is 18 million tons, what's our consumption? So when you say we are a little comfortable and we don't need to panic, what would, yeah.
Okay, every year we require about 25 to 26 million tons wheat for our procurement needs. So if you look at 25 to 26 million tons, if you're 19 plus 18, you are above that figure today. But the point I'm making is, what about tomorrow?
Yeah.
That is a situation which I think everyone should be worried of, especially the government, because it is the government's responsibility to ensure that the country is food secure. So the point I'm trying to make is that the policymakers were not able to see the kind of a crisis that was likely to emerge in Sri Lanka. Now, because of that balance of payment position, Sri Lanka tried to ensure that fertilizer, which is one of their major imports, that is restricted. So they suddenly went into, or they decided not to import, and then they went into what is called as organic agriculture or natural farming. And there's a lot of controversy about that. People believe, or people have been made to believe, that it is because of moving from chemical farming to non-chemical farming, the problem in Sri Lanka has exacerbated, and I don't think that was true. The reality was that Sri Lanka was trying all kinds of permutation combination to see that it can save on foreign exchange, and one of the ways was to restrict the import of fertilizer, which of course we know everything goes wrong step by step in that particular country, and there is a lesson definitely for a country like India, because Sri Lanka, when it enters the global market, let's be sure, nobody takes even notice of it. But when India enters the global market, the prices zoom. And when India wants to import, the prices zoom. But when India wants to export, you'll see prices fall down, because they know India is a big supplier and a big importer. Now, let me illustrate here. I give you an example. We had earlier committed I call it a wheat blunder that we undertook. And this was in 2005, 2006. What had happened at that time was the government of India allowed the private companies to buy wheat directly from farmers. Yes. So all the big giants moved in, and they mopped up everything. So when the situation they arrived that we had to look into how much stocks we have for our food security needs and so on. And I'm sure we all know that 80 million people have to be covered under the NFSA, the National Food Security Act, and which of course came later, but I'm talking about that particular period, 2005, 2006. And in that period, what happened was the government then asked the private companies how much stocks you are carrying. The companies refused to divulge what stocks they were carrying. As a result, India then had to enter international market. In 2 years, 2005, 2006, and 2006, 2007, we actually imported 7.1 million tons of wheat at that time, at a price which was double than what we paid to our farmers. And that became a scandal. So I remember the BJP at that time demanding a CBI inquiry into this fiasco. Now, that situation, I think, should be a learning for us. Imagine if we had exported everything, or we allow everything to be exported even now under pressure, then what will happen? If tomorrow we have to buy from international market, at that particular time in 2006, 2007, at least we were able to purchase 7.1 million tons, forget about the cost. But today we can't even, think of buying 7.1 million tons from the international market, because there is no wheat available. Already, as I told you, there are 53 countries standing with a begging bowl. So I think it's very clear that we have to be, as I said earlier, we have to be doubly cautious. We cannot play around with our food needs. And I think that is where the controversy is all about.
So, you referred just now to also the 5 kilo rice that we're giving to the poor, and that was a good step. Now, that is a short-term kind of a measure, right? And that does not really feed into the kind of food security and the food policy that you have been writing about and talking about. So how do you think that this works? Because this is obviously a political sop, but is it of any reality? I mean, does it really address the problem?
You are very right. I think the message in this particular case, when you distribute 5 kilo rice, is that at least you had maintained that food stocks within the country. Imagine if we were to buy that food stock internationally. I think we are already in the dumps when it comes to fuel. When we import fuel. Imagine if we were also to import food, what would happen? So I think there is a big message there. There is also a big message from this particular conflict that is happening in that Black Sea region, that all countries need to be food secure. Why I'm saying this is because all these years, and thank God our governments did not blindly follow what our economists were trying to force our policymakers. Because in India also economists were saying, oh, we don't need to have a guaranteed price for the farmers or minimum support price. Let the market forces operate. And if we need to buy, or if we need food for our food security needs, why can't we buy it from the off the shelf from other countries? Now, that was the kind of a message that was being given. But I think this war should open our eyes now that that was a wrong message that was being pushed on to us. What every country needs, and what MS Swaminathan had said repeatedly, that every country, your security doesn't depend on arms. Your security depends on food, how much food you carry. I think although it's not the way I would have loved it, I would like the entire agriculture, or let's say people who are involved with agriculture, producing enough food for themselves. That is the way forward, and which means we produce food within the country and good enough for meeting the needs of the population. So we cannot go by what many people tell us, that importing food, as I said number of times, is importing unemployment. So I think what we need is to keep people fully employed, gainfully employed. We must make agriculture economically viable and profitable. Similarly, I guess the other parts of the world also need to focus now on assuring that they are food secure. It is important. Why I'm saying that they need to, or let's say, get back to understanding that food security is of paramount interest, is because economists are telling us, the credit rating agencies are telling us, these are the people who dominate our economic thinking. The people who work with the chief economists of banks and so on, many of them are also telling us that we need to go for, or ensure or strengthen the international supply chains. They're talking about the international supply chains because they are competitive. Now look at it. When you use this word competitive, means that they are providing you cheaper. So when they provide you cheaper, the emphasis goes away from food security, and I think, or food self-sufficiency. So I think there is a conflict here also, and people need to understand that this concept, or this idea that food is to be supplied by the international supply chains, I think is not required. Even if they break, or they are disjointed, let's not worry about that. What we need is that every country needs to be food secure. I think that is the stronger message.
Right. So in this food security, minimum support price, you mentioned it yourself, plays a very, very important role. But you find the successive governments are not been, and particularly even now, they're not very keen to fix this. And the farmers are still demanding it and haven't got a clear-cut answer. So what do you think? How do you think this plays out? And what should the government do immediately on MSP?
Well, I think the message is very clear. After the 1 year long protest by farmers at the doorsteps of New Delhi, where they were, of course, asking for a guaranteed income. I think the message is, or let's say what we see globally, how it has worked out is, not only in India, you look into European Union, America, Canada, and all the other rich countries, they are everywhere farmers are actually hit by the lack of guaranteed prices. And in America, they call it income parity. In India, we call it guaranteed price. So farmers in America were also fighting for income parity. In India, farmers are fighting for minimum support price, which is a way to assure guaranteed prices for the farmers. Now, what the farmers are saying is that there should be a minimum support price for 23 crops. That is already fixed, but it's on the paper. So what they want is that the government should procure, or not let it be on the paper, and whereas farmers are into distress here. What the farmers actually want is a living income. Nowhere in the world are farmers getting living income. And all the economic fundas that we were taught, that lesser the number of people in agriculture would mean the farm incomes going up. Then we were told the bigger the land holdings, because in India the land holdings are small, the bigger the land holdings, it becomes economically viable. Everything now is outdated. Look at America. America has just 1.5% of the population left in agriculture. So their income should be huge. I'm sure we will agree, if going by the same economic prescription that is being doled out to us, reducing the number of people in agriculture, 1.5% compared to roughly India's 50%. So that is a dream for Indian planners. And look at in America, they were saddled with, in 2020, American farmers carried a bankruptcy of $425 billion. And their the rate of suicide in rural America is 45% higher than the rate of suicide in urban America. And there the land holdings are big. Let's not forget that, because the population is very less in America. Look at Australia. Australia, the land holding size roughly is about 14,000 acres. One farm is 14,000 acres, and yet in the last 30 years, 25% farms have closed down. So it tells you that all these outdated economic thinking are still continuing being pushed on to us, and as a result of which we have complicated the food security situation. I'm glad the Economist, this latest issue of the Economist, its cover story is about the food catastrophe the world is now faced with. I hope it opens the eyes of the world community, international community, that we have gone into this market phenomena for too long and have actually done all the damages that which was possible to do. It is time to now come back and see that every country, wherever you are, needs to be food secure. I think that is the strongest message that comes out. Whether we do it or not, I don't think anybody can predict, but I think we need to keep the pressure on.
I think, what you've always been also saying, and agriculture experts have also been saying, is that this whole vision of development, of moving forward, of urbanizing, of giving roads, bridges, factories, industry, has always somehow been seen as in conflict with agriculture. Rather than it becoming a sustained, comprehensive, cohesive policy, we've always pitted it against agriculture. And that is, I think, a lot of that was also that anger and that resentment was very visible in the farmers' stir, which was not, apart from the demands and the withdrawal of the laws, etc., there was this, this passion and this anger. Would you agree?
Yes, if you look at it, even during the protest, what the farmers are demanding. But otherwise, if you look at what I have repeatedly pointed at, if you look at the economic design that has been cast, it actually aims at sacrificing agriculture for the sake of industry. It aims at moving people out of agriculture into the urban areas. Why? Because two things. One, the raw material prices should be cheap, and B is that the urban areas need cheap labor, and where will that cheap labor come? It will come from agriculture. So this is the kind of economic thinking, and this is what this kind of a thought process has brought the world to. So I think, and this is obviously what is evident is that how agriculture has been devastated all across. And I think what we need is to revitalize agriculture. We need to put all our efforts to see that it's a public investment, or whether it's the right kind of prices and so on, to rebuild agriculture. If industry is an engine of growth, why can't we build up another engine of growth, which is agriculture? And look at the kind of employment it will provide. Look at the kind of employment it will provide. So I think it actually addresses most of the problems that the markets or the kind of economic thought has given, or led us towards. And that, in my understanding, and I'm always saying loudly, that unless we focus on revitalizing agriculture or rebuilding agriculture, we cannot expect what the Prime Minister has been saying, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas can only come if more people who are in agriculture, whether they are workers or whether they are farmers, have more wages or have a higher income. Imagine the demand that would be generated if there is more income in the hands of the farmers. And that demand will not be acting only like a booster dose for the economy. It will actually act as a rocket dose for the economy. If 50% people have more money in their hands, after all, they're going to spend in the market. And once the markets are flooded with that kind of a cash, look at the huge demand that would be created. And that drives, or that will move the wheels of development in a manner that the country hasn't even seen before. But the problem here is, Seema, that the economics that you and me were taught when we were young in our graduation and post-graduation, economics 101 or 201, actually had made us believe, it drilled into us, that the only way forward is to move people out of agriculture into the urban area. That is how economic growth will be built. That is what they said. I think that is a limitation that I find most policymakers are struck with. They can't move beyond those textbooks to understand that economics is a science which changes with times. And I think we also need to change with time. We also need to change our economic thinking, and that outdated economic thinking, it's time to discard it and now move to the next phase, which is rebuilding agriculture. And that, I think, is the future the world cannot avoid for long, I'm sure.
I would end on this, but I have one more question, which because this was a great note to end on. But this whole thing also of agriculture, where the young people, it's a family oriented, agriculture has always been family oriented. People now left, and that itself is a major blow to agriculture, right? This generational shift, as it were.
Yeah, but there is a, if we try to understand why are the younger people quitting agriculture, or why are they not interested, let's say the son of a businessman always wants to be a businessman, or most of them want to be a businessman. The son of even a journalist would like to be a journalist, I've seen, but no farmer's son wants to take up farming. That's of course a normal argument nowadays. But the point is, if my father is earning 2,000 rupees out of agriculture, why do you expect my son to be, picking up that job? Now, the government's own statistics in 2016, economic survey, had said that the average income of a farmer in India, or a farming family in India, in half the country, 17 states of India, it said, and which means roughly half the country, the average income is 20,000 rupees a year. Now, 20,000 rupees a year means less than 1,700 rupees a month. No, I can't even rear a cow in 1,700 rupees a month. And this is official statistics. So please tell me, why would my son go pick up that job? Now, what I'm suggesting is, and I'm saying here loudly, that what we need actually is to come up with a commission for farmers' income and welfare. 2 days back, we read a report on inequality, which Bibik Debroy released. The report says that people who are earning 25,000 rupees per month fall in the upper 10% bracket of the country. Imagine, people earning just 25,000 rupees a month, they are in the 10% of the bracket. They can rub shoulders with Adani and Ambani. Now, the point here is, why can't Indian farmers be in that particular category on the top 10%? That means that, the Commission for Farmers' Income and Welfare should ensure, should be given a task or a mandate to see that. I'm not saying that government should issue a check every month. No, but they should be, the Commission should decide or should work out how we can ensure that every farmer or every family can at least get an income, whether it's from dairy or combination of integrated farming systems like horticulture, blah, blah, blah. Everything put together, they can generate an income of 25,000 rupees or more. What is wrong in that? And I think if we aim at that, let's have a clear mandate before us and be very clear that we are not going to shift people from agriculture into the industry. Let's rebuild agriculture, build agriculture as the engine of growth or powerhouse of economic growth. You will see the youngsters would take a lot of interest. Nobody wants to go and drive a rickshaw in the cities, believe me. They all or become a guard in the urban centers. I think they all want to be in the villages. And if that is economically viable, they get a job which is profitable or economically viable. I'm sure that will be a kind of a transition or transformation the country would always look forward to. So let's hope that we, all of us, can build up that kind of a pressure to make the governments move in that direction.
And I think we will build up that pressure once we realize we are all coming from that same farmers community. And instead of turning our back towards what our forefathers believed and practiced, we also join hands with the farmers. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Go back to agriculture. That is the message from Devinder Sharma and from agriculture experts who have been talking about a food policy for years now. We have to become self-sufficient in food. We have to respect our farmers. We have to listen to their voices. We have to make agriculture economically sustainable, and we have to make sure that the pride and respect that the land and the land tilling people require is given to them. Dignity and economics both go together. Thank you.